They said blood makes you family. But what if your own blood becomes the knife at your back? After the sudden death of her parents, young Titilayo was sent to live with the only family she had left. But inside that cramped Lagos apartment, beneath forced smiles and borrowed prayers, lurked betrayal, secrets, and the kind of silence that could destroy a child's soul. This is not just a story, it's a mirror. And by the time it ends, you'll question everything you thought you knew about love, family, and trust. As the Kiki trundled away, I stood before the rusted gates of Aunt Bola's house. The compound looked tired, like it carried secrets buried in its walls. My suitcase felt heavier, not from weight, but from the grief I had packed inside. Aunt Bola opened the door, her expression blank. No welcome, no comfort, just a nod that said, "You're here." I stepped in, not as family, but as a burden passed on. My chest tightened. Somewhere deep down I knew this was not a home. It was a test. The room was small, bare, and lifeless. Just a thin mattress on the floor, a rusted standing fan, and walls that peeled like old memories. I placed my mother's scarf beside the bed, hoping it would soften the space. But no memory could hide the truth. I had stepped into survival. The air felt stale, like grief lived here before me. As I sat on the edge of the mattress, staring at nothing, a single tear escaped. It wasn't for the room. It was for what I feared I'd become inside it. Midnight crept in quietly. Too quietly. I stirred from half-sleep when I felt the door shift. At first I thought it was the wind, until I saw him. Uncle Tunji. His figure stood in the doorway, staring. My heart pounded. He didn't speak. Just watched. Froze. His presence filled the small room like smoke. Unspoken, dangerous. He finally stepped back, closing the door, but the damage was done. My hands trembled under the blanket. I knew now. This house had shadows, and one of them wore a face. The sun rose as if it hadn't heard my silent screams from the night. At morning devotion, voices chanted songs of holiness, but they rang hollow in my ears. I stood quietly at the edge while Aunt Bola led the prayer with righteous authority. Uncle Tunji bowed his head in performance. I couldn't breathe. I wasn't just trapped in their house. I was trapped in their hypocrisy. I closed my eyes, pretending to pray. But all I did was cry behind my lashes. School was my escape. But when I asked for my transfer papers, Aunt Bola's face changed. "There's no money for that," she said, sipping tea like it was nothing. I wanted to scream. My parents had savings. I knew it. Her daughter, Kumi, had already returned to school in fresh uniforms. But I was told to focus on housework. As she dismissed me with a wave, I realized something chilling. This was not neglect. It was a plan. Plan to keep me silent and invisible. Each day became a cycle of sweeping, scrubbing, and silence. From dawn till dusk, I worked as if I owed them my life. Aunt Bola barked orders without eye contact. Kumi mocked my every move. I smiled to avoid punishment, but inside I was screaming. My hands became blistered, my back ached, and still, I dared not complain. They didn't want a niece. They wanted a servant. As I knelt by the toilet bowl, tears fell quietly into the water. No one saw. No one cared. It was a simple mistake. I broke a glass cup. Aunt Bola's slap came before the apology could leave my lips. Final. My cheek burned, but what stung more was Kumi's laughter. "Useless orphan," she muttered. I didn't reply. I just cleaned the shards with shaking hands. Later that night, as I peeled off my sleeve, I saw the dark bruise blooming across my arm. I stared at it in the mirror, not with anger, but with numbness. Was this what love looked like now? Curiosity is dangerous in a house of secrets. That morning, as I swept the master bedroom, I saw Aunt Bolo's drawer slightly open. Inside, papers, letters, money. Something told me not to look, but something stronger made me reach. Before I could touch anything, the door creaked. I turned. Uncle Tunji stood there watching. He said nothing. Just stared. That look again, like I was property. I stepped back quickly. He smirked. Be careful, Titi. Curiosity can kill. My blood turned cold. I met her at the market, Mama Ad. Wrinkled hands, warm eyes, and a voice like music. I was sent to buy tomatoes, but dropped my money in the mud. Others laughed. She helped. No questions. Just kindness. She said I reminded her of someone she once lost. We spoke for minutes, but my heart clung to her like she was an anchor in a storm. As I walked back home, I carried more than tomatoes. I carried hope. For the first time, someone saw me. Not my scars. Me. That night I couldn't sleep. The house was quiet, but my mind was loud. Then came the whisper. T. My heart stopped. It was Uncle Tunji. Outside my door. He didn't knock. Just stood there. I heard his breath. I prayed, God, please. Don't let the door open. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, his footsteps faded. I curled into myself, shaking, biting my lip to keep from screaming. Something inside me knew. He was waiting. And one night he wouldn't walk away. In the corner of the storeroom, beneath old pots and dust-covered yam sacks, I found a book. Torn cover. Missing pages. But it was mine now. Secret treasure. Each word lit a small fire in my chest. Stories of freedom, of queens, of courage. I read by moonlight. It became my voice when I had none, my strength when I felt weakest. But Aunt Bola found it one morning. She ripped the pages, screaming, "Books won't feed you." I gathered the torn pieces like sacred relics. Answered back. Just once. I said, I didn't take the meat. The silence was deafening. Aunt Bola turned slowly, her face unreadable. Then slap. My ear rang. I staggered. Kumi burst into laughter. But this time I didn't cry. I just stared. Not with anger, with understanding. My words would never matter here. Truth didn't live in this house. Only power did. That day I lost my voice. Not from pain, but from the realization that silence was safer than speaking. At the market, Mama Ad pulled me aside. Her voice was low, urgent. I know your pain, Omomi. I see it in your eyes. You must not let them break you. My lips trembled. How could she know? She pressed a small chain into my palm. An old amulet. Your mother gave me this the day you were born. You were special, Titi. Meant for more. I stared at the charm, my hands shaking. For the first time someone spoke my truth aloud. And it terrified me. That night the door handle shook. Gently at first. Then harder. My heart raced. I held the amulet like a weapon. Uncle Tunji's shadow stretched across the floor, just outside the room. Open the door, he said softly. I didn't. I held my breath. He pushed once. Then nothing. Just silence. I waited for hours, eyes fixed on the handle. He didn't return that night. But something in me broke. I was no longer a child hoping to be rescued. I was a prisoner preparing to escape. I returned to the market before sunrise. Mama Ad handed me a folded note. "For your freedom," she said. I opened it behind the palm trees. An address in Ibadan and 5 lines written by my mother. Her handwriting. Her prayer. Her love. My chest heaved. Tears fell freely. I wasn't abandoned. I was hidden. Protected. And now, I had a reason to run. I hid the letter in my shoe. Every step after that felt like a heartbeat toward something greater than fear. Kumi watched me from the window that day. Her eyes narrowed like a hawk's circling prey. She'd seen the note. Or perhaps she'd seen the fire returning to my soul. "You think you're better than us now?" she hissed later, cornering me by the well. I said nothing, just walked past her. But I felt her venom. The kind born not from hate, but from fear. She saw in me what she could never become. Someone who still believed in the future. And she hated me for it. That evening, as the sky dimmed, Uncle Tunji pulled me aside behind the cocoa trees. His voice was low, teeth clenched. "If you run, no one will believe your story." He gripped my arm tight. "Too tight. You're not special, Titi. You're just a girl no one wanted." I didn't flinch. I looked him in the eye. And in that moment I saw it. His fear. Not of me, but of the truth I carried. He knew I was no longer afraid of him. And that made me dangerous. Midnight I packed. Quietly. Carefully. Piece of dry bread. My mother's letter. The amulet. I tied the worn sandals tight. The moon was my only witness. I crept past Kumi's bed. Past Aunt Bulla's snores. My heart thudded with every step. I hesitated at the front door. One last look at the house that buried me. Then I opened it slowly. And like a ghost, I slipped into the darkness, chasing a dream no one had the right to steal. I ran through the narrow bush path, barefoot, breath heavy. Crickets chirped like war drums. Every snap of a twig sounded like a voice calling me back. I didn't stop. Couldn't. The forest closed around me like a mother's arms. Wild, terrifying, but free. The thorn bushes scratched my legs. The cold dew soaked my wrapper. But with every step, I whispered to myself, "You are not a slave. You are not property. You are Titi. And you are going home." By morning, I collapsed near the village riverbank, exhausted. That's when I saw her. A woman in white. Ill. Almost glowing. She didn't speak. Just looked at me with eyes that seemed to know everything. She offered me water without words. I drank, trembling. Was she real? Or a spirit sent by my mother? Either way, I felt warmth. Safety. Hand on my shoulder. And then, she vanished. No footprints. Just peace. I rose, feeling born again. My strength had returned, but so had fear. As I walked the red path toward Isla Orangan, I noticed something strange. Footprints. Fresh ones. Too big to be mine. Too recent to ignore. I crouched, tracing them with trembling fingers. Uncle Tunji. I was sure of it. He was close. Panic surged in my chest like fire. But I clenched my fists and walked on, refusing to let the fear consume me. I was no longer running. I was reclaiming what was stolen. I reached Isla Orangan as the market bustled with life. Sellers yelling, drums pounding, goats bleating. But I wasn't just another face. I was a hunted girl. I weaved through the crowd, eyes scanning every corner, heart pounding at each voice that resembled his. I needed to disappear, blend in, vanish. A kind old woman offered me akara. I nodded but said nothing. She looked at me like she saw the storm behind my eyes. Still, she said, "You'll find your way, Paluadura." Behind the village shrine stood an old oak tree known to carry messages for the gods. I remembered my mother once spoke of it, how you could leave your truth there and maybe, just maybe, someone would hear. I knelt at its roots, carved my name into the bark with a broken shell, and whispered, "I'm alive. I'm not lost." As the wind rustled the leaves, I felt a strange calm, as though my mother's voice traveled through them. I wasn't alone, not anymore. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt a gaze burn into my back. Turning slowly, I spotted a figure on the hill, silhouetted against the fading sky. Watching. I ducked behind a rock, heart racing. Had Uncle Tunji found me? Or was it someone else? Someone sent to silence me? Couldn't be sure. But I knew one thing. I had to keep moving. Whatever waited behind that stare was not here to protect me. It was here to drag me back. I reached the edge of town, feet blistered, throat dry. There it was, the gate to Elder Olabode's compound, the only man my mother ever trusted. His compound loomed like a fortress, guarded by silence and age. I hesitated before knocking. Would he believe me? Or send me back to my tormentor? I raised my hand and knocked. Once. The third knock echoed through the compound like thunder. A light flickered inside. A step. Then. The creak of destiny unfolding. The gate creaked open, revealing Elder Olabode's weathered face. His eyes, wise, tired, froze on mine. For a moment, silence sat heavy between us. Then, recognition flickered. "You are Enian's child," he whispered. I nodded slowly, tears brimming. He stepped aside, and I entered a place that smelled of age and truth. But as the door shut behind me, I knew I hadn't escaped yet. Uncle Tunji's shadow still reached long, even here. But for the first time I wasn't alone. Elder Olabode sat me by the hearth, the fire crackling as if it knew the truth I carried. "Speak," he said, his voice low like thunder wrapped in velvet. I told him everything. My mother's illness, the stolen land, the beatings, the escape. His fists clenched, jaw set. "That man was once your father's friend." The flames danced in his eyes like fury. "You will not return to that house," he said. For the first time I believed safety was possible. Just as peace began to settle over me, thunder cracked in the sky. The compound walls trembled. Elder Olabode rushed outside. Followed. In the distance down the village road we saw it, flames far but rising. Uncle Tunji had arrived. Or sent a warning. The fire danced like a demon, and panic crept into my chest. "He knows you're here," Olabode said darkly. "But he will not reach you without passing through me." Still, fear had returned like an old ghost. Elder Olabode led me through a narrow hallway, his torch throwing shadows on the mud walls. He pushed a wooden panel, revealing a hidden chamber below the floorboards. "Your father built this during the war. It kept secrets then. It will protect you now." I climbed down into the darkness, breath held. It smelled of earth, old stories, and survival. As he shut the panel, I whispered, "Will he find me?" Olabode's voice came through the floor. "Only if the gods allow it." In the silence of the hidden room, sleep finally took me. But it didn't bring peace. My mother came in the dream, wrapped in white, her eyes glowing with sorrow. She didn't speak, but I heard her voice in my chest. "Iri omo mi. Fight for it." I woke gasping, sweat clinging to my skin. The dawn light crept in through a crack in the boards. I wasn't just a runaway anymore. I was a daughter of justice. And justice never hides forever. Elder Olabode returned with a faded envelope, brittle yet intact. "Your father left this for you. He knew someday you'd need to remember who you are." My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. The handwriting was familiar, warm like sun on skin. "My daughter, if you are reading this, then the world has turned its back on truth. But truth, like water, finds its way. You are the river. You are my legacy." I held the letter to my chest and wept for the man I barely remembered. Outside, the village was no longer quiet. The market women spoke in hushed tones. Hunters paused mid-step. "She's here," they whispered. "The girl from the compound." Uncle Tunji had poisoned their minds, painting me as a thief, a curse, a liar. Elder Olabode stood before them like a wall. "She is the rightful heir. Let no mouth speak poison where justice sleeps." But I saw it in their eyes, fear. They feared Uncle more than truth. The battle wasn't over. It was just beginning. Uncle Tunji arrived as the sun dipped low, casting long, sinister shadows. His agbada swayed like a cobra. Flanked by 2 palace guards, he smiled, but it was all teeth and venom. "Eniola," he called. "Come home, child." Elder Olabode stepped forward. "She is home." Tunji's smile twisted. "You harbor a fugitive." Olabode's staff struck the ground. "She is the daughter of Alyawarami. She is no fugitive, she is heritage." The air thickened. Even the wind dared not breathe. That night, the ancestral drum was struck, a rare call for the Council of Elders. Villagers gathered beneath the moon. Elders in white robes emerged, their faces carved with time and wisdom. "We will hear this matter," they declared. I stood before them, heart hammering. Uncle Tunji presented forged documents, lies wrapped in silk. I raised my father's letter. The seal glowed under the torchlight. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Let the land speak," an elder commanded. Elder Olabode poured libation on the soil. A silence deeper than death fell. "If this land belongs to Alyawarami's blood, let it respond," he intoned. I stepped forward barefoot, heart loud in my chest. The wind rose. The earth beneath me hummed. A crack split the ground beside Uncle Tunji. He stumbled back pale. The eldest counselor whispered, "The land has spoken." I was crying, trembling, but standing tall. That night, the soil of my ancestors reclaimed me. At the first call of the rooster, the village gathered once more before the sacred Irako. Elder Olabode stood beside me, his face carved from stone. The eldest counselor spoke. "This land, this legacy, this throne, belongs to the daughter of Alyawarami." The crowd erupted, some in joy, others in silence. Uncle Tunji's mask fell. Rage danced in his eyes as he was stripped of his beads and titles. He cursed the wind, but even the wind turned its back. Justice had awoken and it wore my name. But evil does not surrender quietly. That morning I found Elder Olabode collapsed beside the shrine. His mouth foaming, eyes wide in terror. Prison. Uncle Tunji's doing, no doubt. His last venomous strike. My screams echoed through the hills. Baba! Baba me! He opened his eyes one last time. Eniola. Never stop walking in truth. Then he was gone and the world blurred with sorrow. I held his hand still warm. My shield had fallen. But his words burned bright in my soul. Drums beat slowly as we laid Elder Olabode to rest. His grave was dug beneath the Irako. His spirit bound forever to the land he guarded. Tears soaked my wrapper. The women wailed, the men beat their chests. As I dropped soil into his grave I whispered, "Thank you for seeing me." In death he gave me what life had stolen: identity, courage, family. I swore by the gods that his sacrifice would not be in vain. From that day I was no longer just a girl. I was a flame in the wind. I returned to the house of betrayal, not as a child but as the rightful heir. The compound, once cruel and cold, now stood still before me. Aunt Mornike knelt, tears falling freely. "Forgive me, Eniola." I was weak. I said nothing. Forgiveness was not given, it was earned. I entered the same room where I had slept on a mat, beaten and forgotten. Now I opened the doors wide and let the sunset flood in. The ghosts did not leave, but they no longer held me. That night, the throne was cleaned and the ancestral staff handed to me. "By the will of the gods and the truth of this land," the high priest said, "we restore the title of Omoba Eniola, daughter of Alyawarami." My name echoed across the hills. Drummers played and flames danced. Yet within me a quiet ache remained, one only a father's embrace could soothe. I looked skyward and whispered, "Baba, we did it." The stars blinked in reply. My journey had begun. The crown was only the start. Alone in the royal chamber, I lit the ancestral flame. Shadows danced across the walls carrying memories, some tender, others sharp like broken glass. I saw Mama's silence, Papa's blood, Elder Olaboda's fall. I whispered to the past, "I am not your prisoner. I am your proof." The silence answered with peace. In that moment I realized royalty was not just in blood. It was in truth, in rising from ashes. And though the night was heavy, my soul no longer bowed beneath its weight. The griots gathered at dawn, their drums and tongues ready. They sang my oriki, a praise poem carved from scars and victories. Eniola, Omo Alyawarami, who walks through fire unburned, who dances with thunder and does not fall. Their voices rose like a storm over the land, shaking the very roots of betrayal. Children repeated my name with wonder. Elders nodded. For the first time I felt truly seen, not as an orphan or a victim, but as destiny reborn in a woman's skin. Under my reign Itemo changed. The market bustled again, not with whispers of treachery but with laughter and trade. I rebuilt the shrine, restored broken families, gave land to the forgotten. Aunt Mornike opened a home for orphaned girls. Even the birds returned to sing. We planted new trees, one for every truth spoken, every injustice undone. They called it Ogba Eniola. I didn't rule with iron, but with remembrance, with fire and forgiveness. Mo had a mother once more. I stood before the house where it all began. The door still creaked. I stepped inside, not with fear but with power. My old mat was still there. I knelt by it, touching the cold floor where I once wept alone. I whispered, "Eniola, we made it." Then I rose, left the door open behind me, and walked into the twilight. Some journeys end where they began. But I was no longer the same girl. I was the keeper of memory, the daughter of truth. My right was never given. Took it. Dear viewer, if this story touched your heart, if you felt the weight of truth, the strength in silence, the power of standing alone, then you are part of this journey too. Every like, every comment, every share breathes life into stories like this. Stories hidden in the folds of African memory. Subscribe to our channel at Echoes Africa Stories if you haven't already. Let your voice echo by commenting below. And share this story not just for me, but for every soul still fighting for their rightful place.